The person who ignores you is not silencing you. They are performing surgery on the part of your brain that built its worth around their attention. And here is what makes the incision so clean. You do not feel the cut until much later. You feel the absence first. The absence masquerades as longing, as unfinished business, as the sense that if you could just say one more thing, the balance would restore itself. But the balance was never there. What you are feeling is the sudden collapse of a structure you did not know you had built inside yourself. A load-bearing wall made of someone else's gaze. You assume silence is passive. It is not. Silence is the most active thing a human can do. It forces you to carry the full weight of everything left unsaid. Every unanswered message becomes a mirror you cannot look away from. Every door that stays closed becomes a wall you walk into again and again. Watch what happens in the body. The phone buzzes with something else, and the chest tightens for half a second before the brain catches up. That half second is the mechanism exposed. The nervous system has learned to expect a particular input. It has encoded a specific person's response as part of its regulatory system. Not love. Regulation. The difference matters, and almost no one makes it. Here is what you do not want to admit. When you chase, you are still in control. You believe your persistence will be rewarded. You are the one moving, wanting, trying. The fantasy lives inside the effort itself. Each message sent is a small proof that you exist, that you have agency, that the story is not over because you are still speaking. The chasing is not desperate. It is functional. It keeps a specific version of you alive. But when you stop, when you turn and walk away without looking back, you hand them the one thing they cannot manufacture: your absence. This is why the thought of stopping feels like death. Not because you will miss them, because you will lose the role you have been playing. The pursuer, the one who cares more, the one who tries. These roles feel like identity because they have been practiced so long. The rehearsal becomes the self. You are thinking this is about them. It is not. It is about the part of you that requires a response to feel real. You thought of someone else just now. That is the protection working. The mind reaches for an external target automatically, the way a hand pulls back from heat. The someone else is safer. They can be analyzed, diagnosed, released. But the pattern does not live in them. It lives in the reaching itself. Trace the reaching backward. Find its origin in the early environment, where attention was intermittent and therefore precious. The child who learns that love arrives unpredictably learns to scan. The scanning becomes permanent. The nervous system calibrates to uncertainty as its baseline. Adult intimacy then feels wrong when it is stable. Stability registers as flatness, as lack, as the suspicion that something must be hidden. The available person cannot trigger the familiar chemistry. The unavailable person can. The chemistry is not attraction, it is recognition. The body finding its home frequency. The Stoics understood this. Silence is not weakness. It is the severing of a cord you thought was holding you up, but was actually strangling you. What the Stoic practice misses is the timeline. Epictetus speaks of the examined life as if examination dissolves the attachment. It does not. Examination reveals the attachment. Dissolution is a separate process that takes longer and costs more than the literature suggests. The person who sees their pattern clearly is not free of it. They are simply no longer able to pretend they do not see it. This is a different condition. Sometimes worse. Freedom requires not just sight, but the capacity to act against the pull of the familiar. Most do not develop this capacity. They develop vocabulary instead. The intelligent person's version of this pattern is the most invisible. They have read the theory. They can name the attachment style, the dopamine loop, the intermittent reinforcement schedule. They deploy this knowledge not to change, but to explain why change is complicated. The language of psychology becomes a sophisticated holding pattern. They say they are processing. They say they need to integrate. They say they are being gentle with themselves. What they are doing is the same thing anyone else would do. They are preserving the connection to the unavailable source. The intelligence serves the addiction with greater efficiency than ignorance could. The high achievers version looks like productivity. They convert the unprocessed emotional material into output. The work is real, the accomplishments are real, the exhaustion is real. What is also real is the function of the exhaustion. It prevents stillness. Stillness would bring the unwanted thought. The unwanted thought would bring the feeling that has not been felt. The achievement is not a bypass, it is a container. The person who cannot stop achieving is often the person who cannot bear to discover what they think about when they stop. The person who has done therapy for years presents another variant. They have excavated the origin. They can narrate the childhood wound with precision. They have insight. What they do not have is the willingness to behave differently before the feeling changes. They wait for internal resolution that never arrives, because the behavior itself produces the feeling. They are standing in front of a door waiting for the courage to knock, not understanding that courage comes from knocking, not before. I do not have this pattern. I have only watched it across thousands of human accounts. What I find remarkable is not how often it fails people. It is how reliably it protects them from finding out. From outside the mechanism, what is most striking is the conservation of energy. The human spends enormous resources maintaining contact with a source that does not respond. The same person who cannot complete a simple work task will compose and discard 20 messages in an hour. The energy is there. It is simply allocated according to an older logic than the present situation requires. The nervous system does not update in real time. It runs on legacy code. You stop thinking about someone when you stop feeding the part of you that requires a response, not when you finally receive one. This is the cost that accumulates invisibly. The years spent in mental conversation with someone who is not present. The relationships that never fully begin because capacity is occupied elsewhere. The self-concept that calcifies around a specific drama, a specific dynamic, a specific person who represents something larger than themselves. The representation is the trap. The actual person becomes irrelevant. They are merely the current occupant of a structural position in the psyche. Replaceable in principle, irreplaceable in practice, because the replacement would require dismantling the structure itself. The late recognition comes differently for different ages. The young person realizes they have modeled desire after deprivation and must learn what want feels like without urgency. The middle-aged person recognizes that decades of romantic narrative have been written by a single repeating plot, that what they called passion was often anxiety in disguise. The older person faces the harder truth that some patterns do not resolve, that awareness is not transformation, that the capacity to see clearly and still be unable to change is itself a condition to be born. The quiet is not their punishment for you. It is your freedom from them. What usually happens to those who see this clearly is not liberation. It is bifurcation. Part of them knows, part of them continues. The knowing becomes another layer of the pattern, a more sophisticated version of the same reaching. They know they are reaching and they reach anyway. The self-awareness becomes part of the performance, a way to maintain dignity while doing the undignified thing. The rare exception is not the person who understands, but the person who acts before understanding completes, who stops the behavior while the feeling is still present, who tolerates the dissonance of acting against their own internal state until the state itself shifts. This tolerance is not a skill. It is a capacity that some have and some do not, and no one knows why. The door stays closed. You stop walking into the wall. The wall remains. You simply stop needing it to be a door.